Hi guys, thanks for joining. Thanks everyone. Sorry, I'm just admitting a few more people in, but I think we'll get started. So my name is Rushane. I'm from a company called Luminosity Academy. I just wanted to welcome all of you guys. Thanks for joining. Today we're going to be talking about stress, and here's our agenda for today. So we're just going to start with who we are as Luminosity Academy and what is this Luminosity Parents Network. Second, so we're going to talk about stress and data. So, there's lots of factors that cause stress. We're going to talk about the two main issues. So one is the logistical problem, the actual real issues that students are facing in schools and with their studies. And then we've got Aruna Singh, who's an educational psychologist, who will talk to you guys about the the psychological side of things, how to identify signs of stress in your child, and then give you some just at least point you in the right direction. We obviously can't solve any problems. She's not here to diagnose your child's issues. Just to give you an idea of what options are out there, what educational psychologists do, and how they can help you with your child's problems that they might be facing. Okay, so in terms of the stress and data, so we've got two of my colleagues here, Dan and Fabian. So what we've done is, we've basically gone through the Department of Basic Education's reports. So, after the exams, the Department of Basic Education does a lot of in-depth research into the results that have come through with the exams, and identified, what the problems are. And these are long reports. There's a lot of data in there, and sometimes it's very hard to translate all of that information into practical, real world kind of just points to that you can actually use in the real world. So what we've done is translated that, put them into visual graphs, so that we can try and show you visually and very simply and concisely the reality of the problems that your children might be facing. Because obviously there is a psychological component to it, but there's also a real world issue that, if students are struggling to understand the work, they're going to be stressed out, and they have a right to be stressed out because there are legitimate problems that they are dealing with in the school environment. And what we're going to try to do today is at least show you the reality of that situation, so that you can make better informed decisions about what to do about that, and then also deal with the psychological aspect, because they work hand in hand. If your child's in a bad state of mind, that's going to affect their ability to learn, and if they're in a learning environment that's not effective, they are going to struggle, and then that's going to put them in a bad state of mind. It becomes a spiral, and it's a very bad situation. So we're going to address two of those issues today. We are a company called Luminosity Academy. We do online tuition for university entrance exams. So what that means is basically we do grade 11 and grade 12 tuition. This is after school tuition. We're not an online school. This is supplementary tuition. And we do grade 11, we do grade 12, and then we also do tuition for the SATs for students that want to apply overseas and go into American universities. Just a brief introduction. Our exam preparation courses, we do grade 11, grade 12, we do maths and English, and we do SAT, because the maths and English are aligned to the SAT courses, and those two are the two main subjects that students really need. Between maths and English, those are the foundations of everything else. And after kids come back from school, extracurricular activities, finish their homeworks, there's not enough time to do extra lessons on every subject. So we focus very intensely on the two subjects that are the foundation of everything else. In our exam preparation courses, we have detailed video lessons, we do live tuition sessions, and we have practice exam questions. We also do revision webinars, so we've got some of them coming up later during the holiday season, and I'll give you some more information about that afterwards. After the talk. We also do practice exams. So basically, a lot of students, they stress out about the exams because they only do them every once in a while. And those are very stressful situations. I mean, how often does a child sit in one place and focus for hours at a time very intensely? If they only do that once or twice a year, it's going to be a very stressful situation for them. So we have practice exams. We put them under that same kind of conditions. We do them all online, but it gives them practice. It makes them comfortable, and yeah, it takes away a lot of that stress, a lot of that fear, because they would have done it multiple times, and it's administered online. They get marked. They get feedback on each question, and that will help them perform better. So Luminosity Academy, we do online tuition, but we understand that the learning environment is a whole ecosystem that's built around the child. So the home life, the situation at school, their mindset, all of that affects their ability to learn. So we've created these two groups on Facebook, the Parents Network and the Teachers Network. And those are just groups to, help provide a more holistic approach to improving education in the country. So it's a place where parents and teachers can discuss issues. We'll be hosting regular events like this to discuss important and relevant, timely issues. Next month we've got another session that's going to be about violence and conflict in the classroom. I'm sure you guys have seen so many reports recently about shootings and stabbings in school that happens among students and between students and teachers, and it can be a very toxic environment, and students and teachers can feel helpless. But there are things that can be done. There are people that do training specifically on how to deal with these kinds of situations. So yeah, we're going to have a talk specifically about that next month. So yeah, we'll keep you guys informed about that. All right, so to get onto the meat of the topic and the data that will reveal the reality of the situation that's causing a lot of stress for your kids. I'm going to hand over to Fabian Palmer. He is one of our subject matter experts and very talented and experienced tutor, our maths expert. So I'm going to hand over to him, and yeah, he'll take you through the rest of the content. Then Dan will take over, and then Aruna will take over.
Cool. Thanks for that introduction, Rashane. So my name is Fabian. I'm one of the Luminosity Academy tutor and subject matter experts here. Got my BSc in Pure and Applied Mathematics at UKZN Westville campus and my honours in Pure Mathematics. So I'm very excited to be here this evening to chat to you about all the information and data that we've collected and to explain what we've been working through. All right. So here's some of the information we've collected that will be helpful to frame the context of the current stress that students are going through at the moment in mathematics education as a whole. So we've dug through the previous DBE reports and collected the last 8 years of data, and we've tried to put this data in a clear, reasonable way and explain what is currently happening. So the bar chart here explains the amount of time that students are getting from grade 10 to grade 12 in terms of learning key mathematical topics and the average results that we are seeing coming out at the end of the grade 12 final exams. So this is an average of the last 8 years. And as we can see from here, the averages for majority of the topics generally fall under 50%, even though some topics are given a large amount of time. So we see that although time is one of the factors that causes issues with the current results, it's not the only factor. The main factor being the foundational gaps that students often get from falling behind in one of the earlier grade years and then progressing through, not clearing those gaps because there's a lack of time in the classroom alone. And we've illustrated this over the next two charts for grade 11 and grade 12 in terms of the mathematics teaching time. So in blue is the recommended DBE time. So this is the time that they get to spend in class learning the topics. We recommend that students should be doing almost double this amount of time, and for good reason, because if we want to see those average results in the first graph go up anymore, then students do need to spend more time closing any foundational gaps that they have, and that is where we come in. We would like to spend more emphasis on closing gaps so that students can understand each topic much better. Next, we have what we've collected as the mathematics percentage distribution over the last 8 years. What this picture is telling us is that majority of students are either failing the final grade 12 maths examination or just passing. Where a child needs to be is this green zone right here. That green zone indicates whether a student will be not just successful in most university admission, but also to be successful at university as well. So majority of students are falling under this guideline, and we can see from the pattern year on year, from 2014 all the way down, that this pattern hardly ever changes, all the way to 2021. So students who wish to do really well should be sitting in this green zone in order to make the most amount of success in their future. Lastly, we've looked at notable subjects that have mathematical components, and we've noticed that many of these key subjects that have a mathematics part to it are often one of the most worst scored parts in each of those subjects, further proving our investigation that mathematics as a whole is not just a sake of study for itself, but also applicable to many real-world problems. Barring this now, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Dan Govender, who's going to give us a broader explanation in terms of the international context of where we are currently sitting with our mathematics and English education in South Africa. Thank you so much. I'll hand over to Dan.
Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Dan. Very nice to meet you all, and I'm glad that you're all here. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about some of the realities that we're going through in this. And so one thing I want to kind of stress to you is out of 100 students that are starting school, only 37% of them are actually graduating from matric, and only 4 of them are able to graduate with a university degree. That is a very, very small number from the amount of students that start. And if you take a look at this on an international level in terms of numeracy, by 6th grade, you only have a little over 30% of people who are able to be numerate at an acceptable level. And this just gets worse over time. If we take a look at this over at 9th grade, we can see that less than 10% of students are actually numerate at an international level, whereas more than 90% of students are not. This is extremely dire. And we can see that this translates into reading and writing as well. We can see that in 2008, there was a reading and writing study that was self-reported. So here we can see the people that think that they are doing very well when it comes to reading and writing. There's about 50%. But when we take a look at the actual DBE statistics, for people with a home language of English, we can see that less than 10% are scoring well at an international level. The majority of students are actually getting 60% or less. This is about 70% of students that would fail at an international level when English is their home language. This gets worse when we take a look at students that don't have English as their first language. We can again see that the amount of students that are doing extremely well is less than 5%. And the students that would fail is between 60 and 80%. And this is for the past 5 years. We can see this trend continuing over and over and over again. This is going to be extremely stressful for students because how are they supposed to go into college? And how are they supposed to deal with issues at work when they cannot communicate properly? This is an issue that needs to be addressed. And the problem doesn't just lie with the amount of time that we're putting into it for students, or that the students aren't able to deal with the subject material. The problem is that some of the teachers that are there do not understand the material that they are teaching. In a test for the exact things that they're teaching their own students for, 20% of 7th and 8th grade teachers were able to pass. 20% passed their own test. 80% failed. If we take a look at this and expand it to grades 1 through 6 for math, 40% of teachers passed and 60% failed. So again, remember that Fabian was talking about foundational gaps in math. Math is a subject that builds upon itself. If students are having these foundational gaps from as young as grades 1 through 8, which we can obviously see that they will be, This is only going to compound when they get to high school. They're not going to be able to do the things that they need to do because they have these foundational gaps. So we need to help support them however we can to make sure that they can build the foundation properly and then continue forward. If we take a look at this on an international scale, we can see that in terms of mathematics in 8th grade, South Africa rates among the second lowest. Countries like Singapore, Chinese Taipei, and Korea are scoring well above points of 600 and more. South Africa's near 400, right by Morocco. And if we take a look at science, which is heavily math-based, we can see the same exact situation, but this time South Africa is dead last. It's not just an issue of how much money we're spending either, because we can see that South Africa is spending a significant amount of money per capita on education, but we're just not getting the results. This isn't something that the government can tackle on their own. It's something that we need everybody to talk about. It's something we need everybody to deal with, and we need everyone's help. That's why we're putting on webinars like this for free for everybody, so that they can understand the problem and so that they can help out and give their students what they need to succeed. If we take a look at what this means for their adulthood, one of the major causes of stress in any adult's life is finances. And if students are not able to understand math or science in any way, then this is also translating into their ability to deal with their own finances and to be able to balance their own checkbooks. These are all of the OECD countries, and we can see South Africa ranking dead last again, with about 30% of people that are financially knowledgeable. Comparatively, across all the countries, the average is well over 50%. We need to be able to get our students to these levels so that we are not making their lives more and more stressful as they go on. If we take a look at another example from the Boston Consulting Group, we can see that out of 144 countries that were examined, South Africa ranks dead last in terms of the quality of math and science education. This is the situation that we are facing. And this is why we're asking all of you to help. To help not just us, but to help your students, to help your children. And so now I'm going to pass this on to Rashane, who's going to introduce our speaker for the evening. Thank you, Rashane.
Thanks, Dan. I hope that data was a bit of a reality check for you guys. Unless your child is one of that 6 or 7% that is consistently scoring above 70%, they need help. Whether it's with a company like ours, or whether you get one-on-one tuition, or you get extra classes, they need some kind of help. Or no amount of positive mindset is going to help them, because they have a legitimate reason to be stressed out. They are dealing with a real problem, and they need resources in order to resolve that issue. So I hope that helps and puts things in perspective. We'll talk a bit more about some of the solutions that we have afterwards, and if anyone wants to learn more about that, we are happy to talk about that. So I'm now going to hand over to Aruna Singh. She's an educational psychologist representing a company called Meaningful Minds. They have psychologists, and clinical psychologists, educational psychologists all over the country, and she'll talk to you about how to identify stress and some of the things that they as educational psychologists can help with. So Aruna, I will hand over to you.
Okay, so if everybody can see the introductory slide, I'm an educational psychologist at Meaningful Minds. I have 16 years of teaching experience, and also I have worked as a remedial therapist and psychologist. So in terms of dealing with stress, the APA describes stress as a physiological or psychological response to internal or external stresses, which affect how people feel and behave. Despite what we think stress is a normal experience, stress can be good or bad for you. Eustress. Good stress, called eustress, can be good if it energizes, motivates, and focuses your output by releasing hormones. These hormones put you on alert, cause your muscles to tense, and increase your pulse for you to protect yourself. However, acute stress is usually short term. When someone does something nasty to you at school or cuts you off in traffic and you slam your brakes out of frustration. So chronic stress occurs when you have problems at school, self-esteem issues, and relationship and money problems for lengthy periods of time. Chronic stress is harmful because it puts you on alert even when danger is not even present. How to identify whether your child is experiencing stress? Chronic stress results in frequent headaches, forgetfulness, limited focus, energy, tiredness, trouble sleeping, inadequate sleep, stomach aches, and eventually depression and anxiety. Strategies to deal with stress. Think about how hard you have worked on your studies and that you are capable of passing. Create your study timetable early and follow it. Avoid procrastination. Set realistic expectations. Study for at least 1 hour if you can't study for 2 hours. Find an outlet for your stress, such as doing exercise you enjoy often. Getting a good night's sleep helps you to remember at least 40% more information. Choose healthy food options to improve memory and learning. Avoid energy drinks and stimulants. Use creative visualizations and breathing techniques to refocus your mind. Create a support study group that inspires you to achieve. It is advised to seek professional help if a student is debilitated by stress in their social lives at school and at home. Now we're moving on to what do educational psychologists actually do? So this is what I do. I work with students of all ages. As long as they are at a learning institution, be it a teacher or a student, I'm able to work with them. It is easier to help a child using play therapy as it makes them feel very comfortable and at ease. I offer psychoeducational assessments for primary school children if parents feel that their child is not progressing in their learning. For example, if a child is taking longer to learn to read or grasp maths concepts. A psychoeducational assessment will help us in finding out if there are any barriers to learning. It could be a specific learning disorder, ADHD, ASD, or anxiety that a child has. Psychoeducational assessments gives us ways to help a child. Thank you, Rusheen, and that's the end of my presentation. I don't know if there's any questions.
Okay, thanks. If there's any specific questions for Aruna, does anybody have questions for her? Okay, if there isn't any questions right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just ask a few questions from my side. Okay, so Aruna, you are with Meaningful Minds, right? So from what I understand, Meaningful Minds has branches across the country. You guys have clinical psychologists, you've got educational psychologists. If a parent is, has some indication that their child is dealing with some, with a lot of stress, and obviously they've looked at additional tuition and that kind of stuff, and other factors to try and resolve that issues. And if they think it might be something that educational psychologists would help, how would they get in touch with you, and what would be the process that they might follow?
Okay, so the best way to get in touch with me is to contact Meaningful Minds directly. If you Google Meaningful Minds, their phone number and email address is there. You make an appointment with Melissa, who usually allocates clients and books clients for us, and they will let me know. You could, if you have an issue, your child has an issue in terms of struggling with math concepts or struggling to progress at school, then I would do a psychoeducational assessment to find out what actually is the issue. And from there, we take it from there because we look at what the child's strengths are, not just their challenges, so that we can help the child find out where the areas of difficulty it is and how to assist them.
Okay, great. And we also discussed, I think the other day, an approach where sometimes, with the students, children and parents, they don't always have the best relationship. Sometimes it's a bit difficult to deal with topics like, bad performance, and, sometimes the parents might be worried about how to approach that situation. So yeah, you recommend that they make an appointment with you first so that the parents can discuss the issue, figure out a way to approach the child with that issue.
Yes, generally, children are under so much of stress at school, be it primary school or high school. There's so many subjects for them, and there's constant assessments being done. And sometimes when parents try with their best possible intentions, it's not always taken in a positive light by a child. And quite often, children have hormonal changes, they're trying to fit into school, they're trying to be liked by their peers. So there's a lot of external social pressure, there's peer pressure. So, yes, possibly going to a psychologist just to get a few tips on how to work with children is actually a brilliant idea. So that when you come across to your child, you come across as more sensitive and caring instead of being questioning and interrogative with your child.
Yeah, great. So we've got a question from Taman Sassy. She said she wanted to know, how do I know my child is suffering from stress? I think you did cover some of that in your presentation, but maybe if you can just recap a few points, some of the things that she might look out for. But obviously, you can't diagnose things. We understand. It might be good to also, make an appointment with someone like you to discuss specific things that they could look for.
But I can briefly mention it again right now, Tam, it's usually a stomach ache, it's usually headaches, it's usually loss of appetite, a battle to sleep, or sleeping too much in certain cases, because it's a way of avoiding dealing with the stress. And watch your child if they try to seclude themselves in their rooms and they try and avoid discussing it. And at the same time, the parent has to be so sensitive and not push too hard. So maybe going out for something leisurely, like going out for a movie or some ice cream where the child is more relaxed and might be amenable to talk to the parent if they ask how the child is doing, generally not specifying how did you do in your maths test or your English test. That can draw the child out because their guard would be down and they would be receptive to questions.
Yes, Taman, I hope that answers your question. I think it's important to get a proper diagnosis, because there may be other factors as well. Stress, it could be caused by a bunch of different factors, and the things that affect their learning, it could be other factors like ADHD, other disorders as well. We're not going to go into all of that right now. We will have another session later at another time going specifically into ADHD. I myself only discovered last year that I actually had ADHD, because I didn't realize there were different types of ADHD, and I didn't realize that because I wasn't hyperactive. That doesn't mean you don't have ADHD. And these are things that, you would have to consult a professional, get a proper assessment. So there are other factors as well. But I just wanted to also discuss, another thing that educational psychologists could help with is you also do things like career guidance, that kind of advice. And, in university, because a lot of students are stressed out about, trying to get into university, trying to get into courses, things that their parents might be pushing them into, trying to get into engineering and that kind of stuff. But that might not be the best route for everyone. I mean, there's lots of trades, certain subjects like, trying to get into computer science, whereas, there's a lot of entry-level developers that are going through a lot of stress when they start working, whereas if they had gone into a trade, they would be making just as much money with far less stress. And it depends on the student, and that's also something that you can also help counsel them with.
Yes, career assessments. We do career assessments with grade 10s, grade 11s, grade 12s, new students at university, because sometimes trying to choose a career in grade 10, 11, or 12, sometimes students need time to figure themselves out, what motivates them, what will get them out of bed. So when they come to for a career assessment, we might do a self-directed assessment. I might do a Carl Jung to find out what type of personality that they have and what type of careers would suit such a personality and what their likes and their interests are. You'll be shocked. Students that you have found careers in which they never dreamed it was possible. Because when I worked with a young man who was studying, he actually, after I did the career assessment with him and we looked at his results and I did all the tests, we found that he'd actually made quite a good lawyer, even though he was not argumentative and he was very softly spoken. It's because he had an aspect of himself that fought for social justice. He was part of Amnesty International, things like that. But until he told me these things about himself and we did a life history together, where we did a whole spider diagrams, where he could tell me his interests. And at the end of the day, it all pointed out his three careers. One was becoming a lawyer, and one was to become a journalist, and one was to work for Amnesty International, where he could fight for the rights of people who are marginalized and ostracized in society. So things that you wouldn't think would drive a youngster and would become a career, it's amazing to find that there are other opportunities and other avenues. And he didn't discover these things until he came to me for career guidance. And I helped him design a career path that fitted his personality, his likes. He had a very altruistic nature. So it all fitted in. And sometimes speaking to somebody who's a professional that's out of not a mom or a dad, where they don't feel pressured and the person is willing to listen to what they want, makes a very big difference in designing their career according to their specs. Because many students in first year university choose subjects and they end up dropping out of it or failing. There's a very high failure rate. But if you have a clear indication and clue of where you want to go and what you want to do, it's really helpful when you see a career guidance psychologist.
Great, thanks for that. There's another question here. Do you have any advice to improve a lack of concentration and focusing?
Okay. In my slides, I suggested visual guided scenic meditation where you can imagine you're at the sea and there's beautiful sunshine. You can hear the waves lapping. You do visualizations. You can also do what if the child enjoys doing some sport, engage them in activities like that. So and also try and get them to block out the sounds, especially if they're in the classroom. If the teacher can put them right in the front of the classroom using those types of basic methods. But if it is a more serious issue where the child cannot concentrate in the class, perhaps investigating if you take your child for an assessment with a educational psychologist to determine if there is more than that to the problem. Because you take a child's age and you add 2 minutes to it, that will tell you how long they're able to concentrate. So if you have a 14-year-old and you add 2 minutes to that, that's 16 minutes of concentration, that's 16, 1-6. So it's very difficult in a classroom if children are easily distracted. But a child should be, at the minimum, be able to concentrate, a 14-year-old, at least 16 minutes during the lesson.
Thanks for that. Yeah, no, I think that's also why we teach the way we teach at Luminosity. Is our courses are predominantly video content. because we know that in a classroom, as soon as the attention span runs out, as soon as that willpower that they have to keep concentrating on the lesson, once that drops, they miss a piece of information. Now they've got a gap in their knowledge, and that will inhibit their ability to understand all the future content. So with our video lessons, they can fast forward, they can rewind, they can rewatch as many times as they want. So that definitely does help. There are obviously lots of techniques they can use to try and increase their concentration. But that's what, if none of those helps, it is, I think, important to get an assessment. I wish I had done that. My school years would have been far easier if I knew that all I needed was Ritalin. And because no matter how many other things I tried, it works for a little while and then it stops. But because I had that ADHD, and it was a chemical disorder, and as soon as I got on it, suddenly I can focus for much longer. So that it is important to get a professional diagnosis. If nothing else, I think works.
One other tip I can give parents is that if you notice your child is struggling to concentrate, they can't complete tasks, they have challenges, and it occurs in three specific places for psychologists to make a diagnosis. If it's affecting them at home, in which they struggle to complete tasks, they struggle to complete homework, they struggle with behavior issues at school and completing work, and socially, they struggle socially to maintain friendships, and the same problem, not being able to concentrate, affects the social arena, the school arena, and the home environment. That's the way psychologists find out if a problem is consistent for 6 months or a year in these three domains, to decide that it is an issue and a psychoeducational assessment is warranted. And if the parent is agreeable to that, then they do the assessment. Even the parents should be aware of where their child is in some way not meeting the expectations. And it requires a lot of vigilance. I know it's very hard work being a parent and watching your child and ensuring they do their homework and they keep on top of everything, because we all want the best for our children. We want them to attend university, and it's a full-time job at work and at home. But I have every faith that parents persevere, monitor their children, and because you always have their best interests at heart, there's no reason why they can't be helped early on.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think another important thing to just add on to that point of concentration is social media. If you have to really manage that, I mean, everyone's on so many different platforms, Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, and all of these things are designed to hijack your brain chemistry and to just basically keep you sucked in there and constantly scrolling all the time. It's very difficult. I mean, they have other psychologists that paid a lot of money in order to trick people's brains into staying on that platform and not doing other things that they're supposed to be doing. So yeah, monitoring, I think that kind of thing, and making sure they're using social media effectively. We're going to have another talk on that as well later on, but how parents can approach that issue, how they can help their kids and themselves use technology more effectively. Because from the reports we've seen, sometimes younger children actually use technology more responsibly than older kids and adults as well. I mean, I think a lot of us, just end up anytime we have a free minute, automatically unlock the screen and start scrolling through social media. Luckily, I eventually deleted all of my social media accounts, and I'm so much more productive. I can concentrate for a much longer period of time. But obviously, not everyone has that luxury. So, yeah, there are things that can be done to manage that a bit more effectively.
Yeah, social media, it plays an important role in your child's life. I would use it as a reward system with my child. If you manage to do all your homework by a certain time and your chores, you will get this amount of time on social media. And there is a password parents can use where they lock all the internet. They lock it, and the child doesn't have the internet anymore. But it has to be done very democratically. It must come as an agreement between parent and child, so the child doesn't feel like they're hard done by or they're being treated unjustly. It must be an agreement between parent and child that if they finish the homework at a certain time, they've thoroughly and properly done their work and they haven't just rushed through it, then social media can be used as a reward system. That's one possibility.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, I think it's also important, like you mentioned, having a clear goal. So if they know what kind of career path they want to get into, they know that by a certain time that, certain exams, they need to have this kind of mark. Otherwise it's very easy for their attention to get hijacked on social media, and then it ends up being the end of the year and they haven't studied and they've got to now write this exam and there's not enough time to catch up and to get that mark that they need in order to get into that career path that they want to get into. And that ends up causing a lot of stress. And this is why we're hosting these kinds of workshops early, to try and give parents that kind of that reality check about what the problem is, so that you guys can make more effective decisions. Have a plan in mind. Speak to your child. Discuss what might be the best plan for them, work on a plan together so that they know what kind of marks they need to get, and you can help them with that, so that you have a plan. If they're not on track, you can get them additional tuition, work with people like us, work with an educational psychologist to remedy attention issues, whatever other psychological issues that might be inhibiting their ability to learn. Right.
I don't know if parents are aware, but if a child has been diagnosed with attention issues such as ADHD or ADD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is predominantly hyperactivity. And the other one is attention deficit disorder, where it's mainly struggle to be attentive in the classroom, predominantly attention. And you have a report from the psychologist. You can actually apply through the GDE schools, the IEB, if it's a private school, and even if the child has the Cambridge education system, goes to one of those Cambridge schools, you apply for concessions. So if your child needs extra time to write, or if your child needs extra time to plan, you can apply for those concessions after you get your EdPsych report. And they will grant it to the child. They actually are very fair with children with neurodevelopmental disorders. The ASD, the ADHD, and the specific learning disorder all fall under neurodevelopmental disorders. And the Department of Education, private schools are all very understanding when it comes to applying for accommodations. They will even do it in grade 10, 11, and 12 to ensure that your child is given an even and fair level playing field, because it's not fair for a child with ADHD to write the same exam that a child without ADHD writes without that extra time, because the child without ADHD would have that extra advantage because they are not struggling with the same issues as a child with ADHD.
Thanks for that. We've got one more question about concentration. I don't want to get too deep on this, so I'll just take this last question on this topic, because we already are over time. But yeah, the question is, does electronics affect the concentration and focusing, and what is the max time of using electronics per day?
Okay, it does that indirectly. What happens is that if a child, there's this blue light on the laptops and on the phones, and that signals there's a certain part in the brain that it signals that it's daytime. So if you see that light and you become overstimulated and purely visually, it's very hard at night for a child to settle down and go to sleep. When you have constantly hooked onto your iPad, your iPhone, your laptop, your cell phone, cutting that at least an hour before sleep time, all that stimuli, visual stimuli, blue light specifically, because it affects your sleep. And once it messes up your circadian rhythms, it's very hard for a child to settle down and go off to sleep, because their brain is overstimulated by the blue light. It's expecting that it's daytime. That's the whole point of the blue light. It triggers the brain into thinking that it's daytime.
Sorry for coughing. I'm still recovering from COVID. Thanks for that. Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that point, because my background is actually in film and television. That's what I've actually focused on my thesis about how technology affects affects society in general. And, there's so much research that's been done on that, and like you said, the blue light it affects your melatonin and your circadian rhythms and affects your sleep cycles. There are certain things that you can do with that. So on your phones, a lot of them have a feature that will basically filter out blue light. So if you go through your settings in your phone, iPhones, I think Androids as well. So after a certain period, basically, I think it's after 6 o'clock or so. I think you can change the time, but I think it's usually synced up with the daylight cycles in the area. It'll start filtering out blue light from your phone, so that you're not getting that blue light affecting your melatonin and your circadian rhythms and that kind of stuff.
And also, when you set the pattern of an hour before sleeping, removing all technology and settling into doing, even if it means doing a breathing technique, doing a visualization, reading a book, it settles and calms the child down and tells the brain, right now we're going off to sleep, even if you have the dimmer lights, where you can adjust how bright the light is. So eventually you turn the light down and you set the tone and the ethos of sleep time. The brain, the body starts responding accordingly. It might be difficult in the beginning, but once you set the tone and the body realizes, all right, the light is getting dimmer now, put off the technology, it's time to sleep. You literally train your mind and your brain to go into sleep mode and settle into the night.
Yep, that's good points. Also what I found worked for me is, I like reading at night, but I read ebooks because I have shelves that are collapsing from the amount of physical books, but I can buy lots of ebooks. But with a lot of those ebook reading apps, you can change the color settings so that it's a black background, it's orange text, so you can sit with your phone at the night and read, and then as soon as you're tired, you can just switch it off and you fall asleep. And it's a good way, because you've got it there and you're not being distracted by social media and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I ended up what worked for me. I removed all my social media accounts and I installed e-reading apps. So whenever I have a free minute, open up a ebook. I'm reading an ebook, and at night, it automatically changes to dark background and orange text, and I read, and then I just get tired and sleep. So yeah, that's a good way to go. Yeah. Okay. So if there's no other questions, all right. Thanks. Is there any other questions that anyone wants to ask? Okay, I think we are over time. Aruna, thank you so much for your time. I just wanted to spend 1 more minute just discussing one more thing. Okay, yeah, so there's just one more thing I wanted to discuss. So thank you everyone for bearing with us. For everyone that's registered, we are going to give all of you guys a very, very special deals, ridiculously low rates. But we appreciate you guys joining and staying for the talk. So if you guys want to learn more about our talks, we're going to send you guys an email with our contact details. We'll send you contact details for Meaningful Minds, and in the chat, I'm going to post it in the chat right now. There's going to be a link to a form where you will be able to get a very, very discounted rates on all of our products. So we've got our exam prep courses, our grade 11 and grade 12 courses. It's 800 Rand per month normally. We're willing to give it to you guys for 600 Rand per month. So that's going to be a huge saving. So with our full exam prep courses, we go into detail because, like we said in the data, what students often struggle with is the foundational knowledge. So there are other options. The reason we wanted to go into the data is, unless your child's in that 7%, they need help. Whether you get help from us or from a one-on-one tutor or from extra lessons, you have to get them something, because otherwise they're going to be stressed out. Just sending them to school and assuming that the teachers have it covered and they are going to prepare them for the exams it doesn't work for 93% of students. So from as a parent, I would advise that you get them some help. We believe that our offering is the best value for money. You can do a one-on-one tutor, but that can also be a bit of a hit and miss. Some of them can be very expensive, so you'd have to find someone who's very good and is available and is in your area, and you've got to find time for them to travel to you or to you to travel to them. Ours is all fully online, and we spent a lot of time finding the best tutors that we can find. And these guys are very highly qualified, very talented. They're brilliant. I hated maths. I have ADHD, and when I sit in the lessons, I love it. And we've got the same feedback from all of our students. Students that are more creative, they hated maths, they start to love it, because we take my background's in filmmaking, and I try and force a storytelling approach. So we don't just we don't ask students to memorize formulas. We teach them the history of where does the formula come from, how was it invented, what was it designed to do, and how does it work. So because at university level, you can't just memorize the formula. A lot of the reason they struggle at university is because in high school they study for the test, so they pass the test, they get into university, and now they're stressed out there because now they passed the test, but they don't know how to use any of those tools creatively. They don't know how those variables work, and they struggle at that level. So we go back down to grade 8, grade 9, grade 10 levels. Even although we only teach grade 11 and grade 12, we don't assume any knowledge. We assume that there are gaps in their knowledge, and we teach every piece of foundational knowledge that they need in order to understand that grade 11 or grade 12 concept. And we do it in a really fun, entertaining way, and it's video, so they can watch it when in their own time. And then each week we have a live lesson, so we use that live lesson for troubleshooting. So we have small classes, maximum of 20. That's why we have limited space in these grade 11 and grade 12 full exam prep courses. We only take 20 students per time slot, because we want to give them individual attention. So we use that as troubleshooting sessions. Students watch the videos, they do the practice questions, and then they come into the live session with their questions, and then basically they interact with the tutor, and the tutor will help them work through the problem, try and diagnose where they have a misunderstanding, where they might be confused, and help them work through it. And we also have an Ask a Tutor functionality, so at any time, any day, pretty much any time of night, they can click a button that says Ask a Tutor, they can post a question, and within 24 hours they will get an answer, either a written answer as a message or a video that the tutor will post, or a reference to one of the pre-recorded videos that we already have. So every question gets answered within 24 hours. We also have, so coming up this holiday the holidays are coming up soon. In the last 2 weeks of the holidays, we have exam revision webinars. So these are the topics that most students struggle with. These are crash courses. So if the reason they're struggling with these subjects is foundational knowledge, we'll cover some of it, but these sessions are 2 hours to 3 hours. We can't go into all of the foundations. This is revision. So if they already have a decent understanding, these will be very, very beneficial for them. And it's a once-off cost. There's no, monthly subscription. And, some of these courses we're offering them so cheap. This is like the price of fast food. So yeah, I mean, send them to one of these revision webinars, and you can see our teaching style as well. And if you like it, hopefully it'll be helpful to them. And if they still need more help, sign up to our monthly subscription. And we've also got grade 12 webinars as well. We'll send you all of this information via email and a link how you can access this. And we also do practice exams. So like I said, if the first time your child is if they only deal with the exam conditions once or twice a year, they're going to be stressed out. But if they've done it a few times, they're going to be very comfortable with it, because after these exams they will get their marks back, they'll get feedback on each question, where they went wrong, and then they can either join one of our additional revision workshops to kind of go over that section, or they can subscribe to our weekly or our monthly subscription, and they can fill in those gaps in that foundational knowledge. All right, so thanks Thanks for joining us. This is our contact details, but we will send all of you guys an email, and you will be sent a link. So on that link will be a form with all of these, and then if you want, you can just tick what you want, what you're interested in, and then we'll reserve that price for you. So we'll send you details about all of the payment and how to pick your time slots and that kind of stuff. But this form will only be active for a limited time. So yeah, we'll send that to you guys, and if you send us that form, we will reserve that price for you. So even for a monthly subscription, you'll be charged that same 600 Rand for the rest of the year, not the 800 Rand. All right, so thank you so much. We appreciate you guys taking the time, and please join our parents network, because we're going to be having additional webinars monthly. And the next one is on violence and conflict in schools, and then later on we'll have talk on ADHD, one on how to use technology more responsibly and effectively. So yeah, there's lots of interesting things coming up. So thanks guys, have a good night.